When we met the other day to talk about this panel and what we might want to talk about, it became pretty evident that one of the things that we thought it would be important to do is to help put things in context. You know, we live in a world of instant gratification. I think that somebody said the other day that 10 years ago it was acceptable to return a phone call within 24 hours. Now you're expected to return an email within 5 minutes. And so that may be fine for some things, but change takes time. And as Charlie has demonstrated, changes are going to occur. Changes have occurred. We will see a continued evolution of the suburban market. It's going to be driven by demographics. It's going to be driven by technology. It's going to be driven by incomes and people's preferences. There's all kinds of factors that will have an influence over how our suburban community evolves. And David said, you know, but people need to understand these changes take place over time. And so I don't think what we're going to see is, you know, an immediate change in home sizes and product. That's going to happen slowly, but it will happen, in my opinion. I'm going to let David speak to that. But it's also going to affect land use, transportation patterns, the whole gamut of what makes up the fabric of our suburban community. Let's start with kind of the land development and investments side, and then we can drill down to the home building side after we deal with that a little bit. And while these questions are maybe directed to an individual initially, all panel members are welcome to participate if they have an opinion. And trust me, this is not a group of wallflowers up here. For Ted, it is said that Houston is the most market-responsive market in the country. How long does it take to bring a section of lots to the market in the Houston region? How does this compare to other markets? And do you see changes in that in the future?
Is it on? I guess it's on. If you're talking about a set of lots that already has all the infrastructure in place to the property boundary, if you're really good, probably 8 months, including processing time. If you're in the city of Houston, if you're in some of the suburban cities around Houston, it's going to take longer because the processing time takes longer. So it costs more to operate in other cities. Houston truly is very, very unique across the country.
No other comments. Ted, you have the #1 and #4 residential master plan communities in the country, if I'm not mistaken.
You'd probably say #1 and 2.
Well,
I actually think the top 3 of the top 4 are located in Houston.
3 of the top 4.
Cinco Ranch, actually probably about 5 of the top 15, but Cinco Ranch was #1 last year, and $2.50 and $2.50 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. So, you know, what we did last year doesn't count a whole lot. Our Telfair community in Sugar Land was the #4 best-selling community, and the Woodlands, I believe, came in at #2 in the nation. So we're very blessed by having a strong economy here that has held up better than the rest of the country, and we've been able to maintain our sales paces at a much higher level than the rest of the country. So yes, we did as a city, and certainly my communities, or our communities, did very well.
In this recession, as we saw in previous downturns, there's been a flight to quality. And I think that's been demonstrated in the master plan communities being able to maintain, if not gain, some market share during, you know, the last 3 years, let's say. What sets master plan communities apart for those of us who don't do master plan communities every day? And what would you advise those of us who are doing residential but not on the scale of a master plan communities? What can those of the smaller product residential communities do to maintain or to try to capture some of that market? Not that you want to give it up, but to remain competitive and not become as what I think you termed throwaway subdivisions as time goes on.
Did I say that?
I believe you did.
You had several questions there. What was the first one? Oh, market share. Mike Inselman, we've gone from 11% to 25%. Is that right?
Of the
Master plans?
Close to that number.
Yeah. So during the downturn, master plans in Houston have more than doubled. Is it a flight to quality? I would say it's a flight to quality, but maybe a flight to more certainty. In the greater Houston area, with the exception of some of our outlying cities, we all know we enjoy the benefits of not having zoning. And master plan developers have actually been able to benefit mightily from that because we do have market-based zoning. We zone our own land, and a purchaser in our communities knows within reason what's going to be next to them next week. And using the market to drive those zoning discussions and zoning decisions, and having worked and working in other cities in the Texas and in Minneapolis, I much prefer the market-driven zoning than the planning and zoning commission types of zoning. How can...
I just wanted to add to that. I think that Ted probably identified the difference in the market response to master plan communities this time in this cycle compared to the 80s. In the 80s, as good as the master plan communities were, they were the last guys standing, so that most of the competitors in non-master plan communities simply went out of business. So when David Weekley wanted to go buy some lots to build houses, there weren't that many guys to even see. And so the master plan communities were the guys that were still open for businesses, and as a natural consequence, their market share really increased. I will say that in the 90s and in the 2000s, everybody else learned from the master plan communities. And for the last 20 years, we have done an exceptionally good job in residential development around the city in communities that we would not necessarily classify as master plans, because the master plan communities in the prior downturn forced everybody to raise their game to be competitive. And when you drive around Houston, a lot of times you can look at neighborhoods that if you didn't already know that they weren't part of a larger scale community, they have a lot of the same look and feel and amenities that a larger scale development offered. We're the only ones that offered in the 80s, in the prior cycle. This time around, because of two things, I think. Part was highlighted in Tom D'Alessandro's luncheon address, was the master plan communities have taken their whole game to a completely new level with town centers and urban centers that provide a character that you can't do in a 150-acre development. So they've separated themselves once again from the rest of the market. But secondarily, the sense of certainty. Builders want to build, and they want to buy lots in communities where there's a stable, strong developer and who can drive traffic, because creating urgency in a market like we have today is very, very difficult. So you need a guy, a buyer who already is interested in buying a house, who gets into the market, and they've got lots to choose from in a market like we have now. We have plenty of product, and they're going to migrate to those developments that provide a sense of security not only for the builder but for the consumer, in an atmosphere where every day, every time a newspaper article comes out, anywhere in the country, it's about declining home prices. And people are looking for a safe harbor, and it's as much a psychological reaction as it is a financial reaction this time around. So just add on comments.